promised I'd do it. Scott Poley here, 40 shows I think into the UK Rumours of Fleetwood Mac tour with the Harley Benton Strat. £30 used electric guitar, using it on the road, and it's been modified. These Neutrik silent jacks don't work well with the stock Harley Benton one, so we replaced that with a Neutrik jack socket. Cost £3. That's the only mod. The guitar's been set up. It sounds like this. Right, we're back at Phil's, getting a few setups done just before the tour, and we were talking a lot about fingerboard radiuses, weren't we, Phil? And people have been saying that the fingerboard radius is not what we said it was on the Harley Benton.
Yeah,
and you just showed me.
It's metric, so it's in between the, obviously, because obviously we're reading in inches, because most of the American stuff, you know. But obviously now we've all gone European and everything's written in metric. The problem is you can only read what's in front of you. And if I've got a radius gauge on the neck and I'm putting the radius gauge on, it's telling me it's 10 inch, 12 inch, whatever it is. That's what it is. I don't care what the factory says it is. I can only read what's in front of me. And here's a perfect example. This Squier Precision Bass, it's an 83, I think. And according to the factory, this is a 7 1/4 radius. If I put a 7 1/4 radius gauge on this, and it hasn't been re-lacquered, so the neck hasn't been shaved, there's massive gaps at either side of that. So you can see the light. So that's a tighter radius than 7 1/4. Although at the other end, it's getting a little closer. There's still gaps. There's still light gaps under the back of that. So this, even though it's supposed to be a 7 1/4 radius, is probably 6 1/2 or something at this end. But of course, so if I worked this guitar as what it says off the factory, then it'd be wrong with this, because it's actually reading different. And that's how I look at radius gauge, how I look at necks. I read them with the radius gauge, and I'll take various measurements across the whole radius, the whole length of the neck, to see what it's actually reading.
And that's what we did with the Harley Benton, wasn't it? Yeah.
And that was reading, I think, was it 10 inch or 12 inch, whatever it was. It wasn't what the factory spec said it was.
Yeah.
So that's why I set the bridge at the radius to follow the neck radius, which, by the way, is what every repairman for the last century has done, including the greats like Dan Erlewine and Frank Ford.
So as far as the fingerboard radius goes, we checked and the internet says it's 350 mil in metric, which is 13.78 inches.
So it's just off 14 inch, isn't it? Between 13 and 14 inch, nearer the 14 inch. And
this is where we check it just to show how you do it. This is Phil with his fingerboard radius gauges.
So it's definitely not 14 inch, it's nowhere near. Actually, the first fret is definitely reading 10 inch, second fret is 10 inch. That may be 12, yeah.
And this little tool
That's
is just,
12.
You've got each different radius and it's imprinted on each side, isn't it? And you're just...
It is, yeah.
Checking it out.
If you take all the frets and a check all over the fingerboard and then do an average, because some are reading 10, some are actually reading 12, but none are reading what it says on their website. Absolutely 100% not. And as I say, this is between 10 and 12, so that's what I will go. Between, I'll take an average of that, and if it's 10 or a 12, it's not a massive amount of difference. Not going to cause any, any problems anywhere. So yeah, so there you go. We've double checked, and it's definitely not what it says on their website.
So one of the issues we had on this was the volume pot was a little bit scratchy in the last studio session. So Phil is currently just spraying some, what are you putting in it?
This is just contact cleaner initially, and before anybody freaks out, because I know it can cause problems with the carbon strip, because we had this a while ago. Somebody was telling somebody to flush out the pots with basically petrol and then spray WD-40 in it, which we don't do, because that's horrible. So the contact cleaner is basically to wash all the crap out, because the problem with the game with these sort of the cheaper manufactured guitars is the process of the the CNC machine, and leaves this film of crap and dust inside. And I've cleaned most of it out now, blown most out, but everything's been shook and ended up in the pot. So I've just flushed out the crap, but now to sort of protect the carbon strip inside, I'm going to use this stuff, which is not cheap, but it's a deoxit fader lube. And this is used right throughout the industry, recording engineers, touring guys. If you go, when you're on tour, they'll be using this on the faders. Because it's fantastic stuff. It doesn't attract, loads of dust. It's also, it kind of leaves a film on the carbon strip, which protects it. So it doesn't go, because the thing when you clean out a pot with something like, petrol or lighter fluid or whatever the hell you use for it.
A lot of people use WD-40.
And they do, yeah. And WD-40 is great for your sticky doors and, a load of other things, cleaning toilet seats or whatever hell, whatever it is, making nice omelettes, I don't know. There is a bajillion uses for WD-40, and I use it all the time for lots of things, but never near potentiometers. So just giving this a couple of quick squirts of the deoxit.
And what you're doing there is squirting it into the little hole is just below here, isn't it?
It is, yeah. One of there's a little hole just by the three prongs there. There's another way of doing it if you can't be bothered taking your strings off, taking the plate off, and some guitars are a bit inaccessible. You can always just pop the control knob off. Get a piece of a tubing that's about the same size as the shaft, slide it onto the shaft, and then squirt some down into that tubing, and then rotate it really quickly, and it'll run in through the gap around the shaft, and you can get it in that way. I mean, it's obviously not as good as being able to spray into the back of the pot, but it'll certainly, as I say, one of my guitar repair hero legend, Dan Erlewine, it was one of his tips, and anything he says basically is the truth.
There's a great YouTube channel which we'll link in the description, and it's Dan Erlewine doing guitar setup tips and such like. He's just the master, isn't he?
He was my inspiration years ago, and he, he's worked for all the big companies. He's designed and developed a lot of the tools we use these days. He's been around forever, and as I say, if he says something, then it's gospel. The guy doesn't know about guitar. So
you don't doubt BB King on blues guitar. You don't doubt Dan Erlewine when it comes to fixing guitars.
And the other one's Frank Ford, frets.com. He's the other guy who's, again, some of the stuff he's designed, and they're legends. This is lovely and smooth now, by the way. It feels very nice. And
what you do is you squirt in the appropriate, whatever it was called.
Yes, there are other brands available, probably. Yeah. But I would only be using this stuff because I've used this for years and it is the best. As I say, it's a can of the switch cleaner and stuff is you get it for $3 or $4. This is about £25 for a small tin.
Right.
You don't need a lot, but it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I've used this on vintage guitar pots that have then lasted for years and years and years because this stuff is incredible.
And then all you do is you squirt that into the pot and rotate it round a few times, don't you, really?
That's it. Just going to sort of make sure it's moving freely, and that's lovely now. So we've flushed all the crap out of the pot, and now we've got it. We've replaced the coating inside with some of it doesn't attract a load of dust, and also that allows it to move freely.
I think actually while we're here, one of the biggest things I always say is if you wanted to mod these guitars before you do the pickups,
throw them away.
Yeah. I get rid of the pots, get new ones.
Get some decent full size, CTS or
and all the wiring that can all be improved in the switch.
Yeah, because this is now screwed in. I mean, obviously it's not right the way in, but it's actually bottoming out the screw. I have to actually extend the screw holes inside to pull that plate further up. Don't really want to do it. I never like it when they're completely screwed up against there. So I've just popped another spring and that's pulled it down. I'm just going to measure. So we're going to block off the trem. So we're basically going to make a piece of wood that fits that space perfectly. So it's just like a gentle push fit. And then I can take a tiny bit of spring tension off and it'll just hold it. and then it locks the trem in place. So, you know, if you're not using the trem, when you're leaning on it, it doesn't go out of tune. If you break a string, it's not going to go out of tune. But obviously it's so easy to reverse it, because you just basically put a little bit of tension on the whammy and drop the block out, and then you're back to a working trem. And, you know, some of the guys, the rock guys over the years have used quarters. Just dropped a stack of quarters in there, taped together and what have you, just to hold it in place. But, you know, it's a little bit uneven tension. I just like to get a piece of wood that will fit in there, trim it down so it fits in nicely. Yeah, just need to cut that bit off. That's just going to drop in there. Now it's going to stay in. You should just be able to drop it out if you need it.
So 10-52s are on, and obviously we've gone up a string gauge, blocked off the trem. Just going to have to widen these little nut slots slightly so the bigger strings will fit in them. So Phil's just going to do that with a set of nut files, but the guitar's playing so well. I like 10-52 gauge strings anyway.
And you kind of want it, especially with a tremolo, you kind of want to wash the nut out of the back slightly so it's kind of shaping like that. Just so especially the wound strings don't get caught up in the nut. So it just kind of rounds the back slightly. Otherwise, I'll see with a tremolo, when the string moves that way and comes back, it can get caught up in the back of the nut. And obviously you want a slight angle so you've just makes contact at the takeoff point. You don't want it sitting all the way along completely flat, otherwise it'll buzz.
So this is the last little mod. We're just going to put a nitric jack socket on. Any top soldering tips?
Yeah, get somebody else to do it.
Using it for about 4 or 5 songs in the show. We're using it for a song called I Don't Want to Know, which is why the capo's on it. We're also using it for a song called As Long As You Follow in the second set. What can I say about this guitar? It's great, it's consistent, it sounds good. Problems with it. The pickups are underpowered for this kind of stuff. If I was using it more long term, I'd replace the pickups. The other thing I would say, I mean, I say that, the pickups are fine. I mean, they're not bad, but they're just a little underpowered for something like this. I mean, this is, you know, pretty serious touring stuff. But they sound okay. I mean, they're just a bit quiet, that's all. But we've not had any major noise issues with it, which is incredible, really. We've not done any further setup tweaks, really, apart from minor adjustments to the truss rod, but we'd expect that with any guitar. The problem, I would say, comes in with this guitar is when you're playing more solo-y stuff near the 12th or 14th fret, the notes die away a bit too easily for me. There's not that much sustain, so when playing something like As Long As You Follow, on other guitars I have, that would be a much richer, kind of longer sustain. But let's remember, it's a £30 guitar. I mean, what do we expect? It's hardly bad, it's just not as good as some of my other instruments. But then again, they cost a lot more than £30. It's a really special instrument, this, and I'm going to miss it a lot, actually, because I've kind of really fallen for it. But I am going to give it away to someone that's going to use it and going to enjoy it. And if you want to do that, I'm going to put all the information in the description if you want to enter to win this guitar. I'd love it if you consider liking this video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell icon because I post videos every single week, and I'll catch you next time.